Chapter 9, Development. Isabel Arce, Period 5. Key Issue 1. Why does development vary among countries? Development is the process by which the material conditions of a country's people are improved. The world is divided into developed countries and developing ones. Developed and developing countries can be compared according to a number of indicators. The HDI, which measures the level of development of each country, is calculated by combining three measures. Standard of living is measured through gross national income per capita at purchasing power parity. The HDI health factor is life expectancy at birth. The HDI knowledge factors are years of schooling and expected years of schooling. Some developing countries, especially larger ones, have large variations among regions in the level of development. Breaking news. Gender inequality declared to severely affect the development of a country. The GII, or the Gender Inequality Index, is a system created by the UN to measure the extent of each country's gender inequality. It does this by taking the inequality measure of empowerment, labor, and reproductive health. The higher the GII points a country has, the higher the level of inequality is of that country. GII rankings are higher in LDCs or developing countries. Examples of developing countries with high GIIs are Sub-Saharan Africa, South Asia, Central Asia, and Southwest Asia. The countries with the lowest GIIs are mostly located in Europe. One of the factors the GII measures is empowerment. This refers to the ability of women to achieve improvements in their own status, or to achieve economic and political power. The empowerment level of the GII is measured by two indicators: the percent of seats held by women in the national legislature and the percent of women who complete high school. The percent of seats held by women in the national legislature involves no particular gender skills. Studies show that fewer women than men hold seats, although more women vote than men in most places. Statistics show that in North America, girls are more likely than boys to complete high school. However, in developing countries, boys are more likely to complete high school. The worst lies in Asia, where for every 10 boys that finish high school, there are only 5 girls who finish high school. Another factor that the GII measures is labor force. This deals with the female labor force participation rate, or the percent of women holding full-time jobs outside of home. A recent study shows that women in MDCs are more likely to join the labor force than women in LDCs. The last factor that the GII measures is reproductive health. One of the worst cases of bad reproduction health is FGM, or female genital mutilation. Poor reproductive health is a major contributor to gender inequality around the world. A big part of reproductive health is the maternal mortality rate. This is the number of women who die every 1,000 births. In MDCs, the ratio for maternal mortality rate is 15 deaths to every 100,000 births, and in LDCs it's 140. Another big part of reproductive health is the adolescent's fertility rate, which is the number of births per 1,000 women ages 15 to 19. The ratio for adolescent fertility rate in MDCs is 20 to 1,000, and in LDCs it's 60 to 1,000. Recently, gender inequality trends show that nearly every country's GII has decreased since the 1990s. In conclusion, inequality affects every continent, every country, every state, and every city. The less developed a country is, the higher the GII score is, and vice versa. Even though nearly every country's GII has decreased, there is still a lot of room for improvement. Key Issue 3. Why are energy resources important for development? Development depends on abundant low-cost energy. Most energy is supplied by 3 fossil fuels: coal, petroleum, and natural gas. Developed countries and developing countries each consume approximately half of the world's energy. Fossil fuels are not distributed uniformly around the world. and there are non-renewable sources of energy. Reserves are divided into proven fields already discovered and potential fields thought to exist. Proven reserves are not distributed uniformly. Much of the world's petroleum reserves are located in countries that belong to OPEC. The United States has increased its dependence on petroleum imported from neighbors in the Western Hemisphere. Nuclear is the principal source of energy other than the 3 fossil fuels in the United States and a couple dozen other countries. Numerous problems limit the use of nuclear power, including threat of accidents, disposal of waste, use in making weapons, limited reserves, and high costs. Key Issue 4. Why do countries face obstacles of development? To develop more rapidly, developing countries must adopt policies that successfully promote development to find funds to pay for it. To promote development, developing countries choose either the self-sufficiency path or the international trade path. Self-sufficiency has protected inefficient businesses. International trade has increased dependency on declining resources in developed countries. Most countries have adopted international trade because of evidence that it promotes more rapid development. Finance comes from direct investment by transnational corporations and loans from banks and international organizations. Developing countries have been required to adopt structural adjustment programs. Developed countries have had to choose between policies that promote short-term growth and those that promote austerity. Fair trade attempts to protect workers and small businesses in developing countries. Fair trade involves a combination of producer and worker standards. Developing countries have closed the gap with developed countries in some respects, such as health, but not in other respects, such as income.